Yvette Pegues, and I'm excited to start the first of an entire series of the ABC of Disability. Today we're going to talk about autism, but there's also going to be information that we can share with you kind of halfway through when we break down the different pieces and parts of this series. We are going to, of course, start with just general information, and then we are going to take a quick break and move on to FAQs about the particular disability we're talking about. We are so excited that you are here. So we're only going to spend about 15 to 20 minutes. We definitely would like your feedback. And autism is the very first condition that we're going to talk about today. Very popular, very well known, and hopefully what you're hearing us say is either new to you or interesting enough for you to come back. So autism is also known as ASD, which is Autism Spectrum Disorder. And I think the reason for that is very clear. There's a spectrum. There's no one size fits all with this condition or diagnoses. Autism is on a spectrum, meaning that individuals with ASD can have a wide range of strengths and challenges. So each person with autism is unique, and their experiences and their abilities vary. So that's really important to understand what ASD is and understanding the autism spectrum disorder. We do want to talk about early diagnosis. Early diagnosis is for just about any condition. It's not always as evident, but early diagnosis and intervention can significantly improve an individual who has autism in the way that they behave in the world, the way that the world sees them, and the accommodations that we are able to get into that person's life as soon as possible. So recognizing autism, such as like difficulties with social communication and repetitive behaviors and some other behaviors, are really crucial to early intervention. And so it's really important that we listen to our children, we watch our children, we definitely share any concerns we have about our children with our pediatrician, our teachers, and individuals who spend time watching their behaviors. So there are definitely strengths and strengths and definitely barriers and concerns around autism. Not just the diagnosis, but individuals with autism possess unique strengths, but there's things like attention to detail, strong memory, and creativity that you might recognize. But these are strengths, in my opinion, and capitalizing on these strengths can definitely enhance the overall well-being and contribution to society for an individual diagnosed with ASD or autism spectrum disorder. So there's lots of ways to support this neurodiversity, because autism does fall under kind of a neurological umbrella, which is basically how the mind works and how maybe someone with this and many other diagnoses that occur in the brain and the way that we think. It's important that we recognize that promoting neurodiversity enhances the value and differences in the way that an individual's brain function. Not every brain functions the same, and ASD is just one of the many ways that our brains function. So creating inclusive environments that embrace neurodiversity benefits both the individuals with autism, their family, and society as a whole. So we're being very brief. We're trying to be very linear in the way that we explain autism to you. Of course, you can definitely reach out to us. We'll also have resources in the show notes for you to understand more about autism. We're going to take a quick break. See you soon. Hi, everyone. Let's take a quick break to introduce ourselves. My name is Dr. Yvette Pegues, and I'm the CEO and founder of Your Invisible Disability Group. We empower, include, educate individuals with disabilities and those who work and play with them, those who are members of your family, who attend your school, and who you may not even know have a disability, because 85% of disabilities are invisible, meaning that they are unseen. Only 50% are visible, where you can take a look at someone and have some idea that they need accommodations. And so this series, called the ABCs of Disability, is going to actually go through the alphabet and talk about specific disabilities to help educate the community, family members and friends about disabilities. We're going to talk about FAQs and questions that have been asked. We're going to also talk about just an overview of what that disability entails. Just for your information, we are servants, we are inclusion advocates and influencers, but we are not medical doctors. So if additional information is required, please look in our show notes. We'll have that information. There will also be additional information about me and our organization if you'd like to reach out. But overall, we want you to sit back, relax, watch, learn, and share this information. And you're welcome to follow us so that as these series continue to get put out there, you'll know right away. This segment of Autism A through Z is going to focus a little bit more on FAQs, right? We wanted to get individuals involved, asking questions, the most commonly asked questions about autism. One of the ones we get very often is, hey, what is it? What is autism spectrum disorder? Believe it or not, as widely known as it is, there are still people who just don't get it, don't understand it, don't realize that they've probably already been in the room with someone with a condition, a neurological condition, or with a neurodiverse way of thinking, right? So neurodiverse is just neurological differences that we should recognize as individuals. So when I get asked that question, I talk about how it is a developmental disorder affecting social interaction, communication, and behavior, which we've talked about, but it's also a broad spectrum of conditions. And so it's really important to be specific in the way that that particular individual experiences autism. So another question that we get a lot is, how is it diagnosed, right? How do you know if you have autism? How do I know if my child has autism? Well, it's often diagnosed through behavior and behavioral observations, developmental history, standardized assessments is probably the most formal way that they diagnose it. But, professionals such as psychologists, neurologists, educators, developmental pediatricians, and, some other individuals who are very much attuned to neurology are usually involved in that diagnosis. And there are late diagnoses. So you would consider maybe 0, maybe 1 to 3, and maybe 1 to 4 as a window of diagnoses, and watching these behaviors over time as early prevention, right? But there are individuals who are now adults who may have had what they consider maybe quirks or different things happening in their lives and did not know that they had an official diagnosis. So there are a lot of adult diagnoses that are happening. Also, there is a trend in research around individuals with disabilities also having kind of a parallel condition that falls under the ASD umbrella. What does that mean? So, for example, if someone has a life-changing event like a brain injury or something that happens neurologically, they could pick up some of the behaviors of ASD, diagnosed or not, but still a lot of the same responses and a lot of the same accommodations may be needed. So another question we get, which I'm not going to say is funny, because it's not funny at all. In fact, it's very serious when we hear people ask us questions like, well, can autism be cured? I laugh only because I don't personally take offense to that if there's a very honest reason for someone asking that question, and most of the time it is. That's why we're doing this series here, so we can tell you about things and share information about specific conditions. So there's no shame or guilt in asking the question or even living with the condition. And so we like to say, of course, it's a lifelong condition. There is no cure, if you will, but early intervention and support can significantly improve the quality of life for someone with autism. Now, I want to also be clear, someone with a diagnosis of autism is not broken, right? There's no chewing gum, glue, or rubber bands to put that person back together. They just think differently. So when we talk about, being cured, we want to make sure that the perception is not this person is broken or that there's something wrong. So here's another question that we get, and that's, are all individuals diagnosed with autism savants? Break down the word savant. Basically, it just means a genius, someone who has above average IQ, and that they're functioning at and academic or IQ or knowledge based than most people. Well, autism doesn't give you specific superpowers. I think we all have our own individual superpower, but to think that every single person diagnosed with autism is a savant is a very unfair advantage, a very unfair assumption, and is not true at all, because not all individuals diagnosed with autism are savants, if you will. But you may have some people who have exceptional skills in specific areas. Most individuals with autism have a very diverse range of abilities and challenges, as we mentioned before. But to find those means that you need to get to know that individual, and especially as a child, just put as much developmental opportunities in front of them so that they can find their own genius, because we all have it, right? So the next question we get is, hey, how can I support someone with autism? That for me is a great question, but still, as a question, we need to respond in saying, of course, understanding and accepting, the individual's unique needs are so important. You have to provide very clear communication, very linear, very straightforward information. There's no bearing the trail. We need to be able to communicate in a way that's very linear, because the thought process of someone with autism is likely to be very linear, right? We have to create inclusive environments. That's very essential. And of course, tailoring support of that individual in that setting, wherever that setting may be, to make sure that their needs and their strengths and their challenges are embraced. So that's one way to support. And we're going to keep this series relatively short, so I'm going to just push forward to FAQ number 6. If there's more questions that you have specific to autism or another condition, diagnosis, or disorder you want us to discuss, we're happy to do that. But closing out autism, the final question that we get is, hey, what challenges do people with autism face? It's a great question, because again, disability is a spectrum. There's so many disabilities. Some are visible, some are invisible. And to ask someone how you can support them is the greatest gift of all. It really is, regardless of whether they have autism or another condition. It's just such a blessing to have allies and champions who are willing to support other individuals regardless of their situation. But autism specifically has challenges in the area of social interaction, community, sensitivity, sensory sensitivity specifically, and adapting to changes, right? A schedule is so important to someone who has a very linear and neurodiverse and autism specific condition, right? So, repetition is important, and sometimes a behavioral way that diagnoses autism, but these challenges can vary widely among different individuals. And that's why we ask. We ask the individual themselves, we ask their caregiver, their parent, people who know them, people who they've given permission to speak on their behalf. But one example would be like if you speak to someone maybe with autism and their answer to you is very direct, it's very clear, it might be loud, it may hurt your feelings, it may offend you, but it is not meant to be taken personally. It may not be even politically correct, but it's very truthful and it's very honest. And so we need to understand not just how different people communicate differently, but how we receive information. And of course, create our own boundaries, right? If it's something that's uncomfortable and this person has autism, work with that individual, someone who's caring or supporting them, to create boundaries so that that communication line is always open. There's so much more I can say. I don't personally live with the diagnosis. I know so many people who do, and we have lots of information that has been researched that we can help you with. But at the end of the day, we are empowering every single letter and embracing diversity, where inclusion takes center stage every single week. So join us again when we discuss the letter B. B will be blindness in the way that we explain it. And we really do want to hear back from you. So comment, call, listen to the show notes, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.